Welcome back. Today we're talking all about setting deadlines for lake trout. We're going to show you all kinds of tips and tricks on how to set your deadline like a pro and catch yourself a giant lake trout. Let's go. Alright, so first I like to pick a spot with nice flat, clean snow around it. No disturbance. That way we're going to be able to set our deadline perfectly. We're not going to have any, high snow banks around it that are going to gather snow on a windy day or anything like that. So let's get a hole drilled here and we'll start setting the deadline. Alright, so once I pull the auger out, I just clear the mound of snow from the outside of the hole. I just level it flat and I bevel the snow around it. So I build up this to a taller mound here. And what that does is it obviously gives you visibility of the flag better. But if it's a really windy day, it's not going to get snowed in on you. So if you dig down to the ice, you're going to get flood water that comes in there. Your tip up's going to freeze into the ice and it's going to be a nightmare. You have all kinds of troubles. And then if it is windy, the snow is going to blow in and pack on top of your tip up, and it's just going to cause all kinds of issues. The flag won't go up. You're going to have to come out and check your tip up like 100 times a day. It just gives you no time to fish in the hut. So if you bevel the snow out like this, keep this the highest point, it actually keeps it free from snow and it gives you a lot more visibility of the flag. So we're just going to clear out this hole quick. These one-shot hole scoops actually make a huge difference on clearing a freshly drilled hole. Just a couple passes with these and you're free. So that's step number one, clear that ice hole out. And then the first device I'm going to show you is how to set up the iFish Pro for a lake trout deadline. So it's just a stock iFish Pro. There's a few things we do differently though, for sure. I'm gonna go over them here, but we'll talk about placement of the tip up here first. So what I like to do is I pack the snow around the sides. I just push it back a little bit and I'll actually clear a spot for the rod holder arm here. So you have to kind of just dig out a little bit of a trench. So I'm just gonna cut a little trench there by hand. That way the rod holder has a place to go here. So the next thing you need to do is actually just test fit the iFish Pro into the hole position. So you want it to get a good solid trigger pull. So if it's sitting up all rickety like this, the fish may pull it and it might just sink it down further in the snow. So you got to make a good solid base for it to get a clean pull of the flag there. So what I do is I just place it where I need it here. You can see I need to clear out a bit more for that rod holder. And then I'll actually just push it down. So I push it down just so it's a solid base now. So now that's not going to go anywhere. And the other thing that does is it lets the insulation do its job. So the iFish Pros are insulated and now I've got a really good seal around the outside of it. Just keeps it ice free a little better because now there's no air getting in around it. There's still the hole in the middle, but you still have to check these things every once in a while. So I pull it out and I just clear that snow out now that fell in from when I pushed the iFish Pro down to give it that solid base. So I get that all ice free. And I'm going to put my iFish Pro back down there. So you want that nice solid base. You can see it's a nice high mound here. I can see the flag well. There's no obstructions. If it does get windy here, the snow is just going to pack in around the edge of it. It's not going to fill in anywhere around it. So one other thing I like to do is clear a spot for the flag. So you see here, I'll put the flag down in the down position and I can't really get it down all the way. So I just clear another little slot for the flag. And that also, it hides the flag down in the snow when it's not triggered, so that way you don't see a false flag. You don't look over and you see orange and you're like, oh, the flag's up, and then get all disappointed when you actually realize the flag's still down. So it actually lets the flag go down all the way and kind of hides it in the snow until it goes up. We're gonna grab our rod and our dead bait and I'm gonna show you how we rig them and get them down. So I've got my rod all rigged up here. I'm gonna go into detail a bit later here on everything about rods and rigs here, but we're just gonna get this set up quick. I'm gonna show you how to use the iFish Pro without the trigger device. So you'll notice here, I don't have one of those orange tabs on my line or a bobber stop or anything. That's just gonna cause all kinds of issues, especially when we're fishing in, 70, 80 feet of water with a deadline. When it's cold out, those little orange tabs, they ice up and then you start reeling in, it gets stuck in your rod tip and you actually have to pull it down and break the ice free of it. So we actually eliminate those altogether. and it just prevents you from losing a fish. So we'll show you more about that. But here's my bait number 1. This is about a 10-11 inch Cisco here. So I'm just gonna rig this guy up. What I do is I put one of these trebles right in the top of the head there, right in the bony part of the skull, so it sticks good. We're all barbless hooks here, so you just have to find a good structure point of that fish to get that hook to sit there good. And then one on the side of the body, just like that. So now, if I let it go, it's solid hooked. I'm gonna just move this iFish Pro, and I'm gonna send this bait to bottom. So you'll notice there, I have a fluorocarbon leader on. You wanna use a little bit heavier line on your dead lines for sure, depending where you're fishing, of course. Where we're fishing here, you know, we have some very large trout. So I actually have 30-pound braid on this line, and I've got 20-pound fluorocarbon. So that's going to give me a little bit more strength for a giant fish. You're going to want at least a 2000 size reel for this. I'd recommend even like a 2500 or 3000 series reel. You just need that line capacity to get down there. And the other reason why is when these fish strike, sometimes they just grab it and run. You can be spooled in a second with a small reel. So make sure you come prepared with a reel big enough to hold enough line that's gonna get you to bottom and have enough for a fish to take a huge run, because you still have to get to that tip up. You know, you're 20 feet away from your hut, or 30 feet, whatever you know your regulations are. You just you know, it takes some time to get there sometimes. Maybe you don't see the flag go up right away. So just make sure you have enough line on your reel and a decent sized reel. So I'm just free spooling it to bottom. I just like to just kind of assist it down anyways, just make sure I still have tension. That way, you know, I don't want it to wrap up on itself. I can feel that the bait's hooked good. I'm just letting out line as it goes and just making sure I'm getting that bait down to bottom perfectly. So let's talk about the rods I like to use on the dead lines. This is a 42 medium heavy. It has larger guides on it. You definitely want larger guides if you're running outside of a hut and you don't have heat going. If it's super cold out, your guides are just gonna freeze up and you know, it could cause you to lose a fish. So you want larger guides for your rod that's outside the hut. I do actually go from anywhere from 42 to 48 inch medium to medium heavy, and totally situation dependent, but you know, where you're fishing and everything. But that's what I like to use here for a giant lake trout, is anything from 42 inches and up to 48, medium to medium heavy. And you know, 2000 series reel minimum. I'd recommend at least a 2500 or a 3000 series reel, just for that extra line capacity. And you need something with a very strong drag for this. So I'll show you here. I just hit bottom. I'm gonna show you one thing that could cause you to lose a fish right away is the drag. You know, it's fairly warm out today. It's not super cold, but when it is very cold out, you need to test your drag and see what reel you have, if the drag works effectively when it's cold. See, this one here is a super strong drag on it. And you can see I've got the proper drag. Some of them will just be stiffened right up, and that can cause you to lose a fish like this. So you just want to make sure your reel is good enough quality and it has a super strong drag on it that it can you know, resist freezing and you know, not cause you to lose a giant fish, because that's a heartbreak. You come up to a deadline that's gone off, you know, you wait all day for that flag to go, and you know, you set the hook, fish takes a big run, and your drag's frozen up, breaks off right there. So that also goes in conjunction with using a bit heavier line. Once that drag on most reels frees up after the first run, it's usually good, but you know, to get it to free up that first time can actually cause you to lose a fish. So you want to reel with a super strong drag. Okay, so we're on bottom here. You can see my lines just piling up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna lift it up here. I can feel a lot of tension right there, and drop it back down. And now I'm on bottom. You can see it's just coiling up there. So what I'm going to do, we like to lay these dead baits right on bottom. So, you know, whatever way it falls on bottom is the way we leave it. It should fall with the hooks up. When you pull back tension up like this, it's gonna lay it on the hook side up. So that's why I'm gonna just lay it down gently like this, so it's gonna fall on the hook side up. So I'm gonna put my iFish Pro back here. You can see right there's where I feel my tension, so that's my bait going vertical. Now I'm gonna drop it. It's laying on bottom, so now leave a little bit of slack there. The iFish Pro without the loop on it for the trigger system, what I do here is I grab the line right where I want to set the trigger, grab the trigger device, and I'm going to do 4 or 5 tight wraps around it here. And then I'm going to put the flag down, and I set the trigger on the medium strength pull setting for lake trout. So I'm going to open my bail, put the rod in the rod holder. I like to jam the rod into the snow through the rod holder, give it a bit more support. Now I'm going to make sure that my rod tip is free of any like loops or wraps in the line here. I'm going to make sure that my spool is set correctly here. I'm going to tighten up that line. So I like it so the iFish Pro, I tighten up the line so it has a direct pull. I don't like a lot of slack in there when I set the iFish Pro. Just like that. I like it to have a clean pull and then just spool freely. So when I have the line tight like that, what happens is it doesn't let it wrap around the rod tip and cause any issues like that. So a couple other key points are the wind direction. If the wind's blowing, say this way, you have to make sure that the line is on the opposite side of the rod. So you don't want the wind to be able to blow the line across the rod tip and then you come up and you have all kinds of issues. So you don't want it to blow over the flag either. So you want the flag to be able to come up and the line to go down the hole, not be wrapped around the flag. That can cause you also to lose a fish. So you need to take that into consideration when you're setting this up. The direction that the rod is, the direction the iFish Pro is facing. Like I said, I like to keep the rod facing the hut. That way it's easier to walk up, grab the rod. But you also have to take into consideration the wind direction so it doesn't wrap around the tip of the rod or wrap around the flag and cause you to lose a fish. All right, there is not a lot to these Finicky Foolers. You've got the hole cover, so that's the top of it. You've got the ring, and you've got the actual device itself. So I'm just gonna unpack it, set up the flag there in the hole, set up the rod holder slot, pull the trigger out of the lock, and there you go, that's set. Now we get this hole cover situated. So get a good seat on the hole cover lid. That way it's gonna keep it, you know, thermal protected there. Keep the wind out, keep the cold air out. So now I'm just gonna scoop out the remaining snow. Okay, so like I mentioned, I sometimes use a 48-inch medium heavy. So this is the 48-inch glass rod. This rod is super effective at keeping big fish pinned. It's a glass rod, so it just gives you that extra bend. So there's the bait I'm gonna run. That's just a, you know, another nice Cisco. So it's key to have these things thawed out. I got a bit of slush on them there, just from dropping in the snow. But check that out. Nice fresh Cisco. Gonna take our treble rig again. So I'm gonna put the front one right in the bony part of the head. Second one on the side of the back, just like that, with 2 hooks exposed on each one. Just to make sure I got a good solid point there. So I'm gonna send it to bottom. So these things sink pretty fast. We don't put any weight on them. Just let them go to the bottom themselves. Direct tied from your fluoro right to the treble hooks. So there's nothing there. There's no hardware in the way for the fish to see, no anything. You know, no crimps, no line crimps from a fluorocarbon leader rig or anything for a fish to feel or to see. Just a super clean rig. I'm gonna feed this all the way to the bottom. So one key thing here is to set the trigger device, the Finicky Fooler here, you want the rod tip over the center of the hole. That way it's just gonna be a clean pull if the fish takes line. So you can see this is a 48-inch rod. I'm gonna have to set the device back further from the hole. So just gonna pull it back here. Even still, we'll keep going, right about there. So we're gonna feed this line down. This will actually just free spool down itself now. My reel's a little frozen up from the snowmobile ride out here. I haven't thawed them out in the hut or anything, so I'm just gonna keep feeding it line here. I'm just gonna close this up, keep it from getting snow in there. So look at that, that's nice and set. That is not gonna freeze over at all. These things actually work really, really well. I've had them out on -40, -55 Celsius days, and I mean, the amount that you have to check the hole for ice and stuff is just very, very minimal. these things actually work really, really well. And they're super durable. They don't, they're not like that cooler foam, that super brittle stuff. They're actually really flexible, soft foam. So they work super well, and they're fairly durable. So I don't think I'd let the dog chew on it or anything, but you know, you might mistake it for a Frisbee. But they actually are extremely durable for what they are. I thought they would be a lot more brittle than that. Okay, there we go. I'm at the bottom. So now we're just gonna put the flag on the device, and we're gonna loop the line right around the trigger there. So that's it. That thing's set, ready to go. That bait's on bottom, and ready for a big fish to come grab it. Hopefully sooner than later. So let's talk about success of the dead baits. Why do we set them? Well, we're looking for giant lake trout on them. We're not looking for small fish. You can totally set them with a small Cisco on it, suspended above bottom, and you can pick up small fish all day, but we are talking about catching giant lake trout. So I'm talking 35-inch plus. That's why we're using these big dead baits. For us, every day we go out, we set deadlines for the clients, and if we go fishing for ourselves, we set ourselves a deadline. So where we are, we're allowed to use 2 lines. So we're gonna be using 1 jigging rod in the hut, and we're gonna set 1 deadline for big fish. Not every single day are they gonna get hit. We sometimes go days, even you know, multiple days without them being hit. But then one day comes around and they get hit 3 or 4 times, and you've caught 4 masters on it, and it's just, you know, I wouldn't be caught without having one out. Generally, it's always a big fish, 35-inch plus. That's why we're setting them. So we're working our baits in the hut, our jigging rod and that, and we set a deadline for these big fish. So the typical structure that we set them on is generally the edge of a reef structure, you know, the path around a reef that these big fish are going to take, or the shoreline structure, you know, a contour where you've got a big steep break. It's kind of a forced route for a fish to take. So you're going to follow along these edge contours. They're going to follow along, you know, these seams, and that's where we're setting out these dead baits. We're not just setting them randomly, we're actually pinpointing specific structure with our dead baits. We're targeting these seams, we're targeting these steep drops, and we're targeting these passageways that we know big fish travel. So let's go over the rigging here that we're using on these big dead baits. So I've got a 2000 series reels on this rod. This is a 42-inch medium heavy rod by Timber, and 30-pound braid down to a 20-pound fluorocarbon leader. Then direct onto that fluorocarbon leader, I've got a number 2 Gamakatsu barbless hook here. So that is tied direct to that fluorocarbon leader. And then off one of the shanks of the hooks, I've got another fluorocarbon length here, about 3.5 to 4 inches long, tied off to a second treble on the rear. So I don't like to go much longer than that. 3.5, 4 inches, I say, is about the max, just because you run the risk of hurting those big fish, and we don't want to do that. Those fish have been around for a long time. We want to put them back in the lake for someone else to enjoy. So it's barbless hooks up here, but even in a location that wasn't barbless, I would still use a barbless on my second hook. That way, if you do hook something a bit deeper, you can easily get that hook out of there without injuring one of those big fish. So if you're allowed to use barbs, maybe use barb for the top treble, but definitely go barbless on that second treble. You don't want to hurt those big fish. You want to get them back in there, catch him again, catch him when he's bigger, let someone else catch him. So for now, we've got 2 barbless hooks, but the distance between them, 3.5 to 4 inches. You don't want to go much more than that. You run the risk of the fish taking it too deep and actually injuring the fish. So it's strictly catch and release here on these big fish. So we are running that rig, you know, with fish safety in mind. So this rig is designed with a little bit of finesse in mind. There's no wire clamps on it. There's no wire crimps. Everything's tied direct. Everything's fluorocarbon. The only thing there is hooks and line. So we're doing that just because, you know, this bait is sitting stationary. It's laying on bottom. These fish can see everything. Lake trout are notorious. Just any trout in general are notorious for seeing hardware and terminal tackle. That way we've got nothing in here that can fail either. You know, you've just got lines straight to the hooks. There's no swivels in between. There's no clamps that come undone, no crimps. It's just your knots. I'll let you use whatever your favorite knots are, but that is how we rig these up, and that is what is successful for us. 2 treble hooks, 3.5, 4 inches in between them, one tied off the other shank like that, and you know, the same poundage of fluorocarbon line as your leader there. That way you're not causing any breaks if you just have one hook on the back. So the cool thing about this rig is if you want to switch over and target small fish, you just remove the bottom dropper, so you have your single treble on there. That way you can just hook a smaller Cisco on there. You can hook like a 4 to 6 inch Cisco on there straight through the back, and you can hang them in the water column, say 20 feet down, 30 feet down, and that's what we have success on here anyways. If we just hang a smaller Cisco, you know, under the ice like 20, 30 feet, they come up and smoke it. So this rig's super adaptable. You can trim that bottom length of fluorocarbon off, so you just have that single hook on there, and use a smaller bait. But for now, we're gonna fish with 2 big dead baits, so we're gonna leave the two treble hooks on there with about 3.5, 4 inches in between them. Well, check that out. Setting your deadlines properly ends up in a trophy lake trout, just like that. 39 incher, nice fat healthy fish. You can get them back here. Awesome. You can't beat that, fighting giant lake trout on a deadline.